Hey guys, this is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm back with our running back video for DraftKings for week 14. There are a couple guys on this list that I know many of you may not have on your list. A lot of cheap options this week because there are some wide receiver options and even some quarterback and tight end options that I really want to pay up for. So the running backs who I've been looking at are kind of towards the lower end this week. They are guys who I think are safe for both cash and tournaments, but I haven't really been paying up much for running back this week. There are a couple guys you can pay up for. I just don't think any of them are in really good spots in order to return value. So they didn't make my short list this week. If there's somebody that you like, by all means, feel free to pay up for him. I think you're going to wind up having to use one of the guys that we mentioned in this video, though, in order to make that work. So let's call up the guys that we like this week and show you what we're talking about. The four guys who I'm a big fan of at the running back spot this week are DeAngelo Williams at 6,000, Sean Drone at 4,800, David Johnson at 4,300, and Tim Hightower at $3,000 minimum. Now, DeAngelo Williams, the one guy who I would pay up for. Even though he has a tough matchup against the Bengals, he had 9 carries for 72 yards and 4 catches for 39 yards in the air against Cincinnati last time. This is a guy who's averaged 22 fantasy points per game as a starter, and for some reason is still priced at only $6,000. He's had 20-plus touches every game where he's been the starter and Le'Veon Bell has been out so far this season, and he's even averaged 3.5 catches during those games as well. So he is a guy that can help you in the passing game. God forbid that the game script gets away from him. He's one of those guys that we call game script safe, because if they're winning, he's going to be getting the touches and the carries, running the ball out, running the clock out, trying to keep the lead. And if they're losing, he's still the guy that's in there on passing downs, that's picking up some catches and some yards that way, and will still be the guy who's getting the short yardage work in on third down situations and when they get down into the goal line. He's only failed to get 92 yards this year in 1 game as a starter, which I think he's up to 8 games as a starter right now. Only once has he failed to get 92 total yards. He's had 120, he's at 180. I think he even had 200 in 1 game. He's scoring touchdowns left and right. So $6,000 for DeAngelo Williams, even in a little bit of a tough matchup, still seems like he's a little bit too cheap to me. The next guy I want to talk about is Sean Drone. He's $4,800. For you guys who don't know, this is the starting running back for the San Francisco 49ers right now. And not only is he their starter, but he's basically their workhorse. He has a great matchup against Cleveland here. Cleveland has allowed the 6th most fantasy points to running backs so far this year. Drone's a guy who's averaging just under 20 touches a game as a starter. And he's somebody who can catch passes out of the backfield. He's had at least 4 catches in every one of the 4 games that he started so far this year. And he's averaging about 15.5 fantasy points as a starter. Now, I do think this is a game where he can get into the end zone. He hasn't gotten into the end zone all that often, so he's been basically putting up 12 to 13 fantasy points without finding the end zone. If he winds up finding the end zone, that gives him 20 fantasy points. 20 fantasy points for 4,800 is a little bit over 4 points per $1,000 of cost, and I think that makes him one of the top running back options on the week. So I'm going to be rolling out a lot of Sean Drone in my rosters, and I think it's a good idea for you guys to do the same. Now, if you are playing on the Thursday game, I really like David Johnson again at 4,300. He's a big favorite at home, and he's going to see plenty of touches as the lead back here. He had 24 touches for 120 yards and a touchdown in his first start. I don't know if he gets back to those same numbers, but I definitely think that the touches will be somewhere in the 18 to 24 range as well. Minnesota is solid against the run, but they may concentrate more on keeping guys back to stop the passing attack, which is what most people are worried about against Arizona. Carson Palmer's had a great year. They got those great receivers out there with guys like Floyd and Fitzgerald and, even John Brown. So I just think that David Johnson is still way too cheap for a guy who's going to be seeing 20 carries, whose team is possibly going to be winning at home, and has a good chance for him to, run out the clock late with some touches and also get himself into the end zone. If he does anything near what he did last week and puts up another 20 fantasy points, you're looking at another 5 times value on his price tag, and that's something that you can't find from a lot of these other guys. One guy who might be able to get you that, though, is Tim Hightower at $3,000. A lot of you are probably scratching your head and saying, who, what, why is Benny recommending this guy? Well, he plays in a high total game for the Saints against a tough run defense in Tampa, so it doesn't even seem like it's a good spot for him. But Mark Ingram was placed on IR this week, and the word is that Hightower is the guy who's going to see a huge load here. Now, I know everybody's screaming, oh, come on, they got CJ Spiller. But in case you guys haven't noticed, I don't really think that the Saints are big fans of CJ Spiller at this point. He's not even getting work in the passing down stuff. If Kerry Robinson didn't get hurt, there's a good chance that Spiller would only be seeing maybe 2 or 3 touches a game. As it is, he's not even seeing 10 touches a game. So I really don't think it's all that crazy to think that Hightower could be the guy that takes over for Spiller, takes over for Ingram, well over Spiller. A lot of the beat writers and people that we've been talking to have been, saying pretty much the same stuff here. So I don't think that, it's all that crazy. I don't think that Hightower needs to do all that much to reach value. If he gets himself into the end zone, maybe catches 2 or 3 passes and has 50 or 60 yards total, that would be enough to get him 15 fantasy points and be like a 5-time salary kind of guy. And I do think I would only use him in a GPP. I wouldn't use him in cash. But by using a $3,000 running back in a GPP, it opens up so much salary flexibility for you. You can go spend up at quarterback. You can get 2 or 3 stud wide receivers and fit them in. You can go pay up at tight end instead of having to punt with the cheap option. You can look at the top end of the defenses instead of trying to find somebody in the $2,500 range that you can get to. So a guy like Tim Hightower could be very valuable this week, because of all the different things he allows you to do with your roster construction. Now, like I said, I wouldn't expect a 40-point game out of him, but really, if he can get you 12 to 20 points, you got to be pretty happy with the return that you get from him. And I don't think that that's out of the question in a pretty solid matchup in a high-scoring game, in a high-paced game, like the one he's going to be playing in, if he gets anywhere near the carries that most people think he's going to. So that kind of sums it up for our running backs this week on rotocurve.com. Thank you guys for joining us. And as always, stay classy, DFS.